皆様ごきげんよう。Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is part 2 of Watch This Before Starting to Learn Japanese. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, please check it from the description box down below. So in this video, I'll cover the rest of the 6 categories that I have divided things into. So, number 4, input and output. Number 5, learning a language is learning a culture. Number 6, you need motivation. So let's go. Number 4, input and output. This is not just when it comes to learning a language, but something that I think is important to keep in mind when learning anything. You need a good balance of input and output. Then what is input and output? I identify input as reading, listening, and learning technical grammar. Something that has to do with absorbing the rules and studying how native speakers/writers do things. On the other hand, I identify output as writing, speaking, or creating things on your own. Think of learning a language like learning how to play a game of chess. Chess is not easy. As a player, you'll have to learn the role of each piece and how it can move around the chessboard. If you have never played, it can take quite some time to understand the rules thoroughly. You can spend days, weeks, months, or even years learning the rules, but if you don't play it at all, you'll never get good at it. On the other hand, what if someone puts you, a person who has never played chess, in front of the chessboard and starts playing the game with you? You are going to be super lost, and you might get the idea of how pawns can move and the game's overall goal, but well, the end product of this match will be the other person winning and you, a super irritated, depressed, confused player, losing. Learning the language is the same way. We do have to start by learning the rules. If you are a newborn, that's a different story. But then we also have to use them to get the feel of how things works and get used to it. That is the only way you're going to achieve your goals. Number 5, learning a language is learning the culture. Now let's talk about language and culture for a second. Have you ever wondered when people from other countries try to learn your mother tongue and how they sometimes use words and phrases that just doesn't feel right? I was that person as well. On my journey of teaching myself English, I often came across people who told me that I was too apologetic, that it was hard to understand what I was trying to say, and that I just had to be a lot more straightforward. My grammar was correct. I used suitable sentence structures and academic words and learned to use slangs as well. Then, what was wrong? It was the difference in culture. In Japan, it is considered better when you are not too straightforward, and even when you sugarcoat things, people will just get it. That being normal for me, I didn't even realize that I wasn't being straightforward enough when trying to communicate with native English speakers. No wonder they were confused when I said things like, "I'll be there if I can," and never show up to events, or "I would love to come to visit," and never contacted them when I was coming over. I learned the hard way that learning a language is just not enough. You have to learn the culture. Learning the culture can take time. I didn't read books on how cultures and traditions are in English-speaking countries, but I studied conversations between native English speakers from different parts of the world. I watched crazy amount of English TV shows and videos. I made and hung out with friends and worked for masters who are English speakers. I studied and analyzed how people make word choices, their facial expressions, their body language, and so on. To this day, I wouldn't say that I am professional in genuinely understanding the language and culture of native English speakers, but I think I can say that I have at least learned to be a lot more direct and not confuse others in conversations. In my videos, I will try my best to compare and contrast culture differences and the little nuances in words, but this will come from practice and by getting used to the culture. Will this take time? Yes. Can this be confusing? Yes. Will this be worth it? Yes. This will help you get the little hinges of little details in anime, manga, traditional literature, people speaking, and even jokes that people make, and I can assure you, it will all be worth it. Number 6. You need motivation. Motivation is everything. I was born and raised in the countryside of virtual Japan, where it was almost impossible to run into people who aren't Japanese in ethnicity. I didn't know the concept of international schools until I was in high school, and it was mind-blowing when I learned that there were people who live in Japan and yet go to school using English. How did I get to a point where I can speak without thinking in my mother tongue and translating the words into English as I speak? It is all because I had motivation. I loved English literature growing up. I also fell in love with the magical world, which I won't go into detail, but the one that you are supposed to get a letter on your 11th birthday. That was enough motivation for me to keep going. I woke up every day as a young child and studied at least an hour before heading to school. I read books. I watched movies. I immersed myself in English the best way I knew how. The only reason I could do this was because of the motivation that I had that one day I would go to school outside of Japan and learn whatever I wanted to in English. My family is not a wealthy one, but I learned to do everything I could in my power. I found the power of the internet and read Wikipedia pages in English. I commuted to a public library where I found a little corner with English books and borrowed every book available. I bought old copies of newspapers and magazines in a DIY store because people used them as wrapping papers. I chased around my high school English teachers, and I am grateful that they were willing to spare their time with me. If you are motivated, I assure you that there is nothing impossible. Trust me, and yes, you will have those moments where you feel like giving up, as if you have stumbled across a massive brick wall and that you just don't know how to break it. When those moments happen, cherish your motivation and have fun instead. The way to overcome that brick wall doesn't have to be to break it. It can also be to climb it like a tree. So, there you have it. The things that I believe to be important to know before starting the journey of learning a language. There are many different methods in language learning, but I think I highlighted those that can be useful to the majority of language students. Oh, and one thing to add at the end. I have been asked how people can look for a good native Japanese tutor, and I just wanted to address that it is unnecessary to always look for native speakers when starting to learn a language. Non-native Japanese teachers are great as well. They will be able to curate and understand more about your needs in a way that native Japanese teachers won't be able to, especially if they have certifications or a background in language education. So please don't go around saying that native speakers are better to learn from or vice versa. Are you sure that you can teach your mother tongue effectively to someone who has never learned that language before? Well, I will leave you with that. Learning a language is challenging. But don't forget, this hard path leads to a fantastic world of more entertainment, knowledge, adventure, and excitement. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I hope to see you in my other videos. それでは皆様、ごきげんよう。